I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday. Training camps are underway. A lot more get underway next week, and that means we are bustling with news. Dennis and I are going to be looking at the NFC South, which isn't the most exciting of divisions, although it does have some fantasy pieces. So it's probably good that we got just a whole bunch of news. And that starts with a couple of criminal proceedings. Rashee Rice, who you may remember prior to last season, got popped on a reckless driving that led to an accident, got that adjudicated this week. 5 years probation, 30 days he'll have to serve in jail. The NFL now expediting his punishment. Meanwhile, Jordan Addison, who was facing a DUI charge also from last offseason, pled to a lesser charge and is now also waiting his turn with NFL punishment. Dennis, I saw there's a baseline of 3 games for Jordan Addison's situation. Many of the early speculators have guessed between 4 to 6 for Rashee Rice, although could be more. How are you feeling about potential suspensions, and what do you think that does to, dynasty-wise, I don't think it's a huge hit, but redraft, that would certainly give me pause if I thought Rashee Rice was getting 6 games.
Now, I feel like 4 games is going to be it. It's been a while. It was reckless what he did. I just think, maybe it's 6 and then appealed down to 4 is where how they get to that number. But it feels like a 4-game suspension. I was trying to look up what the term that Addison pleaded guilty to is. It was wet reckless. So that's like saying moist. That's weird, Wet reckless. I feel like he's probably, maybe he'll be 4 and bargain down to 3.
Does it mean it was wet reckless? Was the road wet? I can't remember what the conditions.
I think that's their wink wink. We know you was drinking. Don't do it again. We're gonna let you off on a lesser charge.
I also personally wonder what it would have been. Texas has not historically been super hard on athletes.
Yeah.
So it's hard not to wonder how the Texas of it all, and he was a college star there in Texas, plays into some of this.
Yeah, it just, Rice has 5 years probation, 30 days in jail. He basically has 5 years to serve the 30 days in jail. So, he'll probably knock it out in the off season, serve a couple weekends here and there, get it taken care of.
Yeah, he has 5 years to do 30 days. That part's not a big concern.
We should have grabbed the Humble Pie 30 Days in the Hole. We could have dropped that in. That's a jamming tune. Was listening to Humble Pie on Spotify the other day. I think they jammed.
For the Addison one, we wondered what the pass offense was going to be like for Minnesota. They really don't have a lot of good wide receiver depth, unlike Kansas City, who has tight ends, and they actually have some wide receiver depth to kind of weather that. I think that puts a lot more pressure on Justin Jefferson, and they have to hope, I would guess, that TJ Hawkinson is healthy, because beyond that, it's Jalen Naylor, and I don't even know if I know who their wide receiver 4 is. We didn't really talk about even a wide receiver 3 when we previewed them.
Yeah, so I know they signed Rondale Moore. Ty Felton
That's
is
right, but Rondale Moore,
rookie
it's been
du
a couple
jour.
of years, right? Because he blew his knee out before they even got to last season. I feel like he was injured the year prior too with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I could see them, running a little more 12 personnel with Josh Oliver. I know he filled in nicely for TJ Hawkinson. But Naylor will be he's the third guy. He's slotted to be the starter in the slot. Yeah, as much as dynasty heads kind of like Ty Felton in his third round draft capital, I'm not sure. He's the direct backup to Addison, but I don't think he's going to jump in and assume Addison's targets. I think they'll get spread around. Aaron Jones, good pass receiver. Jordan Mason, capable pass receiver. And like I said, Josh Oliver and TJ Hawkinson could eat up some extra targets by running in 12 personnel there. I know they like Naylor. I forget who their wide receiver 3 was last year. I know a couple of years.
Jalen Naylor.
What was it, Naylor last year?
Yeah.
Because I know they had who's the guy they let go to walk and go to New England, and he really didn't do anything. I think he was out of Florida State. KJ Osborne, yeah.
So, Naylor was the guy last year. I think Trent Sherfield came over from Miami. He was probably in their wide receiver group last year, either Minnesota or Buffalo. I can't remember. So,
yeah, I think they'll piece it together. It's going to be early in the season. They're going to be run heavy with JJ McCarthy.
That's the thing. We didn't think it was going to be a great pass offense, but this does make me. So let's say Addison gets 3 games. I'm not sure it's a super robust pass offense anyway. Let's say Rice gets 4 games and Addison gets 3 games. Where are you having them for thinking about the range for a 2025 finish, thinking about redraft? I mean, I would probably have Addison in the wide receiver 4 range, and he was wide receiver 19 last year. And that's probably where I would have Rice, because we thought he might be slow in his first few games coming back off of a big injury anyway. Rice may actually slide farther back depending on who establishes themselves and what his share of the targets ends up being.
Yeah, Addison finishing wide receiver 19 last year. I would probably have had him in the wide receiver 3 category, low end wide receiver 3. I probably think that's still low end 3 is still achievable if he only misses 3 games, especially if McCarthy kind of picks up as the season goes on and gets a little more comfortable. I think they're going to be kind of conservative to start the season anyways with a quasi rookie quarterback. He missed all of last season, but he's been in the system, and I got to believe he feels comfortable in the system. So their first 3 games, they have the Bears, the Falcons, the Bengals. I had them going 2-1 in that stretch. I think they could probably, maybe, I don't think Addison demonstrably changes that outlook. I had them upset in Cincinnati. Maybe that doesn't happen with a little less offense, but to me, it feels like a negligible impact. I think they'll be fine. Now, if it's 6 games, I think then we have a little bit longer.
I don't think either of them missing time necessarily affects how I feel about their team, because Kansas City played almost all of last season without him, and they would theoretically be in better shape because they still have Juju, which I know we don't think is great, but he's familiar with the system, and they have the rookie Jalen Royals and Hollywood Brown should be back. So they may not even miss a beat with starting receivers. The Minnesota, I'm with you. I feel like it's more run heavy. I don't know that. I think their looming suspensions probably are more injurious to fantasy owners than they are to their actual NFL teams.
Yep, I agree.
A couple of defensive players got deals. Von Miller signs to go with the Commanders, chasing a Super Bowl with a third team. Meanwhile, TJ Watt, the back and forth with Pittsburgh got resolved. He got a monster 3-year, $123 million extension, $108 million guaranteed. If you played IDP, you'd probably for sure want Watt. Miller's a guy that interests me a little bit. He's still got some good pass rushing skill. He's just not a full-time dominant player like he was during the Super Bowl 50 Denver Broncos era. But I thought both these were pretty important NFL moves for a couple of teams that have playoff aspirations.
Yeah, this TJ Watt signing, I think they didn't have any other choice. When they signed Aaron Rodgers, the moves that they've been making tell us they think they can be a playoff team. They're going to operate like they think they're a playoff team. So it would not have made any sense at all to sign Aaron Rodgers and then trade TJ Watt.
Well, it's not just signing Aaron Rodgers. They went and got Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey. These are not young acquisitions. They went and traded for DK Metcalf. It seems like everything they've done is, rather than look at their situation and say, hey, maybe we should start over, it's like, hey, how many crusty old guys can we pull in here to try to keep this train going?
They're very much in the we don't start over mode. They just I don't think they're going to start over until they change coaches.
Some ways, I wonder if that's what leaves them trapped in a semi-mediocrity.
I agree with you on Von Miller. I think he's a very effective situational pass rusher at this stage of his career. It's probably I wouldn't expect him to play over 50% of the snaps, and I think he could still get double-digit sacks.
Because I was going to look. He did enough last year that he hit his incentive. He had 6 sacks last year, played in 13 games. Doesn't look like he did a lot more other than sacks, only 17 tackles, 8 quarterback hits. So he's but for Dan Quinn, I would think that's probably all he wants.
Yeah, let's see what did he play snaps wise? Go find that.
I just remember that he and Josh Allen in that week 18, they were a couple of stars that came out and appeared, and they only had to play like the first half of the first quarter because both of them got the stat they needed. Josh Allen keeping a starting streak alive, Von Miller getting the sack to hit their incentives, and then they were pulled, and I was like, well, it was nice seeing you guys.
Yeah, Miller played 32% of the snaps in 2023 and 33% of the snaps last year in 12 and 13 games, respectively. Maybe, if he gets over 35%, maybe he can. Maybe I was a little aggressive with 10 sacks, if I'm being honest here. But
no, but 5 or 6 is not bad. Right now, it's interesting. If you looked at the depth chart, the way they have it set up, they're slotting him in as the right defensive end starter. I don't know if I see him starting, but we'll have to see. But they brought in Javon Kinlaw. They have Deron Payne. They have Jerzahan Newton, who I believe was 2 years ago, right, that they picked him up. Some other young guys like Sheldon Day. Frankie Louvu is in there. Dorrance Armstrong, Jacob Martin. So they have a good group. And if I recall from Quinn with Dallas and in other places he's been, he uses a little bit of a frontline rotation. So I could see Von Miller being the starter on third downs.
Yeah.
So
he'll play the first down of the game and then just third downs the rest of the way.
Two more pieces of news as it relates to injuries and wide receivers. Mike Williams was slated, we mentioned, to go on PUP to start the year for the Chargers, and instead the eve of training camp, because they are already in camp because they are one of the Hall of Fame game participants, he went and retired. Meanwhile, the 49ers placing Brandon Ayuk and Ricky Pearsall on PUP. I wasn't shocked about Ayuk. Pearsall raises an eyebrow, especially now. We talked about what kind of leverage does Jawan Jennings have. It's getting better by the day.
That lever has gotten longer. You know, Mike Williams, 30 years old. Last year was admittedly a tough situation. In 3 teams, he had a combined 55,
only
68.
2 teams. Jets and Steelers. Only 2 teams, Jets and Steelers.
Oh, that's 2 teams. All right. That other line that said 2024 was the 2 teams combined.
Was the combined, yeah.
34 targets, 21 catches. He was coming off a season where he only played 3 games.
So if I recall, coming out of college, he had some pretty significant back and spine issues that slowed him down. So it might be more, rather than, his career was not very long. It might be more, I was thinking it's kind of impressive, actually, that he made it 8 seasons, because I remember when he came out and he had those back injuries prior to his rookie year, and there was a lot of concern about whether
he missed 6 games his rookie year because of it. So
and there was a lot of concern about whether he was going to be able to hold up physically. And I mean, 8 years isn't too bad. He made some decent money bouncing around, and probably good for him just to recognize that as much as he wanted to go back to a place that he felt comfortable in, Los Angeles, it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah, I mean, he had 2,000-yard seasons, only 1 season over 100 targets. He had 1 10-touchdown season, a 9-touchdown season.
That glorious Joe Lombardi season where he was their version of Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, he was a good wide receiver. He wasn't great. He was probably best suited to be a 2/3 kind of guy. He had a Liam Neeson skill set, a particular set of skills.
He could find missing daughters.
Yeah. He, as long as they were deep downfield. And,
I do think he had kind of
30% career catch rate, but he played downfield. He was known for the deep ball. He was one of the better deep ball receivers, and those are the toughest targets to convert. 6'4", 218. He was a big guy. Made it 8 years, dealing with back issues. I don't know if I'd be surprised if he shows up in a training camp next year saying, I've had a year off to rest, and maybe I'll try something. I wouldn't be surprised if we never hear from him again.
So let me ask you this. We know we want Ladd McConkey. He was pretty great. I think we all have Trey Harris in Dynasty. He's not really acquirable. He's been going back of the first or top of the second round. I think he has potential to be their kind of number 2 guy. If you're looking at redraft or a YOLO end of the roster pick, do you prefer Quentin Johnson, or are you taking a shot on Keandre Lambert-Smith?
I'm probably taking a shot on Darius Davis or one of the tight ends. Davis he's a slot guy. McConkey, they can move outside in 3 wide receiver sets. Quentin Johnston, oven mitt just ain't where it's at. He just can't catch the ball. Lambert Smith, there is some potential there. He was a 5th-round pick, so it's not like wasn't nothing. Almost 6'1", 182 pounds. So can he? We've already seen clips of Johnston dropping passes. I don't think Johnston lasts a whole long time. Maybe Jalen Reagor slides up and takes, but we expect it to be a lower volume passing attack because we're all into the Greg Roman rushing offense, Omarion Hampton and Arg Harris. But I think that, the receivers, it's going to be McConkey, then it's going to be Harris. Anybody else is truly a dart throw.
Do you think Johnston and Rager sit there and try to decide among them who was a bigger draft disappointment?
No.
Because, I mean, don't you remember a lot of people were taking
They walk
Rager over Justin Jefferson
every single day and look at each other and go, so you're telling me there's a chance?
Speaking of disappointments, it's a good time to transition to our division we're looking at today, and that is the NFC South. We will go in order of their finish. Their lone playoff team last year was the first place finishers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were 10-7. Among their losses, center Robert Hainsey is gone, linebacker Joe Tryon is gone, linebacker J.K. Britt is gone, and safety Mike Edwards. But they didn't lose any major skill position pieces off offense. That is good. Key additions in the draft, they went and got Emeka Egbuka, as if they needed another wide receiver. And they picked up Hassan Reddick. He did not have a great 2024, but prior to that had been a pretty impressive pass rusher, so he adds to this defense. Fantasy finishes, Baker Mayfield was QB4 last year, Rachaad White running back 22. Bucky Irving, who was a rookie, came out of nowhere, finished as running back 13, should be the starter heading into this season. Mike Evans was wide receiver 14. Chris Godwin finishes as wide receiver 53, but he was wide receiver 2 on a points per game basis before getting injured. Jalen McMillan stepped up a little bit down the stretch, ends up as wide receiver 55, showed some progress as in his own rookie season, and Cade Otton had some big moments as tight end 14. They have an embarrassment of riches in the passing game, and they have plenty of running backs. The Buccaneers, could they quietly be one of the best teams in the NFC?
I think the biggest question for the Bucs is their offensive coordinator. After losing Liam Cohen, who is Josh Grizzard?
He's the next man up. I mean, Baker has had a different offensive coordinator every year, and it doesn't seem to phase him a lot.
Yeah, I think Baker's ability to manage stuff like that is pretty high level. I think that they'll keep doing what they were doing for the most part. I mean, you got Mike Evans, Godwin's coming back. Jalen McMillan had stepped up, and I know a lot of dynasty managers were optimistic about McMillan being able to slide into a wide receiver 3 role. But, the drafting of Emeka Egbuka kind of puts the kibosh on that. Their other receivers, let me see, where'd they go?
I mean, you don't know for certain it puts that we are all assuming that Emeka Egbuka kind of blocks Jalen McMillan, but what if he doesn't?
Well, our lads has Egbuka as the starter in the slot and McMillan backing up Godwin. So if Godwin misses time, then McMillan will have an opportunity to be a starter for 4 games or whatever it is. Sterling Shepard played well for them. I know Raheem Jarrett and Trey Palmer, I think each of them flashed a few plays last year. Then they also drafted Tez Johnson in the 7th round. So they have some pretty good depth at wide receiver, but they do tend to funnel it to Godwin and Evans. What having Emeka Egbuka does, he's a first-round pick. Godwin was a 3rd. Evans was a 1st. McMillan was a 3rd. Palmer was a 6th. Raheem Jarrett was a free agent. So I probably am willing to pay up for Mike Evans because I still think they're going to ride this 1,000-yard train. He's a red zone threat. Bucky Irving is leading the way on the ground. He had 5 fewer targets than Rachaad White, did rush for over 1,000 yards. I expect Irving will continue to get the lion's share of the groundwork, and at worst split the receiving work. That being said, Sean Tucker is still waiting in the wings, and when he had to play, he looked every bit as good as Bucky Irving and Rashad White. So this is a team that's got a ton of depth. And to top it all off, when people were injured, Cade Otton put up stellar numbers too. So they can go any
I know
number
he was
of
tight
directions.
end one for a few weeks.
They could go any number of directions. The downside is there's just one ball. Maybe, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, but the play is probably Baker. If you want he's the one piece you're going to want to pay up for in this offense. Everybody else, I think you're probably trying to buy on maybe a half a round drop in your draft, because I don't think you're not going to find any bargains in this on the Buccaneers unless you're like dumpster diving. You're going for who was the other guy? I said Trey Palmer, hoping you're going to put him on, or you're grabbing Sean Tucker because you're like, well, I'm gonna play for the or Keeft. You're just dumpster diving in case of an injury.
So let me ask you this: do you think Mike Evans is able to continue his 1,000-yard receiving streak?
I think he'll get one more year. I think his skill set is still pretty good. He was never known to beat you with speed. So he doesn't look like that. You see some receivers and you watch him run and you're like, man, that dude is slower. I'm not a scout and I can tell he is slowed way down. I don't think you really notice that with Mike Evans yet. And he does get some deep balls, and he gets dinged for his lack of yards after the catch because he catches touchdowns. And so where are you going to run when you're already in the end zone? He also he's not a deep ball contested catch guy a la Mike Williams. So he's a 12-yard, 14-yard, 15-yard guy, and he may get you a little bit of yardage afterward, but he's not going to get great separation. So any yardage he gets, he's battling for. If he stays healthy all 17 games, I think he gets another 1,000-yard season. Because he's tied with Jerry Rice, I think, for consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. And he has the record for most to start a career. I think he wants to beat Jerry Rice. I think the team will, within reason, do whatever they can to help him get that. Now, a couple of these years, he like last year, he just made it. It was last year or the year before.
So Jerry Rice holds the record with 14. It says Mike Evans is second with 11.
Oh, okay.
He tied Rice's record for most consecutive 1,000-yard seasons.
Right.
So he could break the most consecutive, but he would have to do it for 4 more years to break the overall.
I don't think he breaks the total. I think he breaks the consecutive.
Also, ladies, if you're out there, this is just your reminder every once in a while. Find someone who loves you as much as Dennis loves Sean Tucker.
He's the MVS of running backs.
There you go. The number 2 team in the South last year was the Atlanta Falcons. At one point, they were in first place in the division. They had a real horrendous finish, which led to a quarterback change. They ended up 8-9 out of the playoffs. Among their departures, the aforementioned Rondale Moore, who went to Minnesota, didn't really play for them because he missed the whole season with injury. Grady Jarrett, the defensive tackle, Eddie Goldman, another defensive tackle, headed out. Richie Grant at safety, and Justin Simmons at safety. Among those they brought in pass rusher Leonard Floyd. They went and got some pass rushers in the draft in Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. Fantasy finishes last year: Kirk Cousins was quarterback 21, played through week 15 before getting benched, 14 starts. Michael Penix Jr., quarterback 45, only played the last 3 weeks of the season. Bijan Robinson, running back 3. Tyler Algier, a great number 2, was running back 43. Drake London, wide receiver 5. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 31 in his first year with the Falcons. And Kyle Pitts, tight end 15. It is the Michael Penix show. Cousins is still there. Should be the backup. We saw some good splashes from Michael Penix in those 3 starts. How are you feeling about this Atlanta offense?
So I want to feel really, really good. I think that I love Penix's desire to, like, he's like the second coming of Daryl LaMonica. So he could be like the Mad Bomber too. He would have been a great Oakland Raider. Yes, I know they're in Vegas, but he would have been a great Oakland Raider. The downside,
for a long time, so
he only had a 58% completion rate. That has to improve. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I think that being the guy for the whole offseason will definitely help. He's going to get, more significant time with Mooney, with London, with Ray McLeod. Bijan Robinson, is arguably the number 1 running back in the league, and probably the number 1 dynasty running back in the league. Do I still hold out hope for Kyle Pitts? I don't know. Pitts had that injury, and he hasn't seemed to have, been quite the same athletically since that injury.
It's kind of a big year. It's the last year of his rookie deal. It's not a lock that they retain him. That rookie season saw 110 targets, 68 receptions. Hasn't come close to that since. 28 receptions second year, 53 his third year, 47 last year on 74 targets. Was the 4th option in the passing game. Ray McLeod had more targets and more receptions than him. Bijan had a couple fewer targets, but had more receptions than him. I feel like he's a tight end too, but people want tight end $1 for him in trade value.
Yeah. To me, he's one of those guys that I'm probably willing to roll the dice on him in Dynasty if I'm getting a discount. I'm not going to pay tight end 1 prices for him, but if somebody is just fed up and they're like, I'm tired of Kyle Pitts, what can I, let me, are you so fed up you'll sell him for 2/3? Will you sell him for a 27-second? I don't know if I want to give up a 27-second, but 2/3, I'd give 2/3, maybe even 2/3 and, extra piece, some, Sean Tucker maybe. But I just, if we adjust our expectations of Kyle Pitts and not expecting him to be, a 1,000-yard receiver or a 10 touchdown receiver, or 120 target. Can we just expect him to be one of those 5 through 12 guys and then be happy with that? Or because they spent the 8th overall pick or something on him, do we have to continually say, well, if he's not a top 3 tight end, it's a disappointment? We're 5 years in. If he can be a back end tight end 1 consistently, that's pretty good for your fantasy teams.
I just don't know if he can get to back end tight end 1. He finished as tight end 15 last year. It feels like unfortunately that's right about on par with just what he's been. That's why I said it feels like he's a wide receiver too, but people won't sell him to you for that because most of them have still been holding on to him since his rookie year, when some people were taking him as pick 3 or 4 overall in the rookie draft. And that's where I kind of struggle. I wonder if he'll do better changing scenery. Maybe he kind of reminds me a little bit of Evan Ingram, a guy we saw some flashes of with the Giants, who we thought we were going to see some big things, but never quite came together there. But once he got in his second spot, a team that maybe deployed him a little bit differently or treated him a little bit differently, he kind of took off. That feels like my best hope for Kyle Pitts.
If I said Kyle Pitts was going to give you 50 receptions for 700 yards and 6 touchdowns, would you be okay with that?
But that's essentially what he did, just about what he did last year when he was tight end 15. So as a tight,
if you add a touchdown and 7 yards to that, and that was tight end 10, that was Tucker Kraft. So I mean, he's right in that range. It's kind of a touchdown here or there, or one big yardage game here or there, and he's tight end 9 versus tight end 13 or 14. So I don't know. I think if I can get him cheap because people are disgruntled, and I've got him as my tight end 2, and let's see where it goes. To me, it's almost one of those. Let me just buy dirt cheap. He might be my eToys. I bought that stock for pennies, and it just shit the bed. But
well, I'm kind of with you. Like, if you have him, I wouldn't give him away either. I'm not advocating that the people that are trying to get high value are wrong. I feel like you kind of just have to hold him and hope it. Maybe, like you said, hope he works his way up into that low end, and then maybe you move on. I do like London. I think London's, a wide receiver 1, Bijan obviously a running back 1. I don't know what to make of Penix. I feel like I have QB2 expectations. I don't know if I think Atlanta's going to be better than they were last year.
Yeah, I think Penix is a guy that could be in that 62% completion range, but have a high yards per reception because he likes to take that deep shot. Maybe an above average touchdown rate and an above average interception rate. He doesn't feel like he gives a whole hell of a lot of shits about throwing interceptions. He's like, oh, well, I'll get him next time. He comes off a little Mike Martzy in that regard.
Well, and that was whether what they knocked Kirk Cousins for last year, because Cousins was really the crucial turnovers. So be curious if is there a world in which he flounders the first 2 months and they switch back?
Yeah. If there wasn't, they'd have already dumped Cousins for cheap. They're like, we're not going to give you away because you just never. Penix has an encyclopedia of injury history, and so I think if I'm Atlanta, I'm like, look, man, I get it. It's almost like what it feels like Cleveland is doing with Joe Flacco. Cleveland has said, look, we know we can stick you in and you're going to play reasonably well. We don't need to give you any practice reps. We don't need to, do a whole lot with you. We're going to throw some reps at you occasionally here. We're going to pay you handsomely to be that guy that in case of emergency break glass, you're that guy. And Flacco was not happy about it, but that's his situation.
I also think financially there was no real incentive to get rid of Kirk Cousins because they would take such a big hit. But definitely an asset. I think if you have Cousins in Dynasty, last year didn't work out that well for you, but I wouldn't completely give up hope on getting a return.
I mean, Cousins is almost one of those guys, much like Pitts. You can take him off somebody's hands for cheap to throw as your QB4, later this year or maybe next year, he might pay off as a super flex quarterback to help you win some games.
All right. Well, the other one that I think is an interesting stash right now is Tyler Algier, because I believe he's going into his contract year with with Atlanta. Do you think there's a chance that he gets to go somewhere else? I know you've liked Algier and you've wondered what would happen if he got an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It felt like he might have signed a short extension.
I think he's still on his rookie deal, I thought, and this is year 4. I'll look it up.
It is. Yeah. No, it looks like no, he's still on his he did not extend.
I don't know if they would offer it to him yet because they're probably waiting to see whether it's worthwhile.
Well, I mean, he came in as a rookie and gained over 1,000 yards and played pretty well.
But you didn't know you were going to get Bijan.
Correct. So, if I'm Algier, I probably am not keen to re-sign there. I'm going to look for an opportunity to start. And since Dallas has an aversion to drafting startable running backs, maybe he goes to Dallas next year. I could see him being a decent fit there. I don't know. Did you see the blurb on Jadon Blue? Somebody's reporting I forget who it's Smith, somebody I think, that the reason he hasn't gotten any first team reps in the offseason program is because he's lazy.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The third place finishers from the South, the Carolina Panthers, they actually they were only 5-12, but they were a little frisky down the stretch. Miles Sanders is gone, went to Dallas. Maybe he's trying to share his work ethic with Jadon Blue. Ian Thomas, the tight end, is gone. They got rid of Shaq Thompson at linebacker and Xavier Woods at safety. They brought in Rico Dowdle from the Cowboys to be their new backup running back. They drafted Trevor Etienne in the draft. They also drafted wide receiver Tet McMillan, gives them a kind of big new number 1 target there. They brought in linebacker Christian Roseboom and safety Trevon Moehrig. Last season, Bryce Young finished as quarterback 20 despite a dreadful first 2 games and getting benched for about 3 weeks. Bounced back and actually looked pretty good. With Dave Canales, Chuba Hubbard, who got a contract extension, finished as running back 14. Rico Dowdle was actually running back 23 for the Cowboys, had his own 1,000-yard season. Xavier Legette as a rookie, wide receiver 60. Adam Thielen, the veteran, wide receiver 52. What are you expecting from Carolina in fantasy?
I like the way Bryce Young finished the year. He was QB 12 from week 8 on after he got the starting job back. He just kind of picked things up. Only a 61% completion rate, so that obviously needs to go up. But he did play better. We need to see what happens with Xavier Legette. They drafted Tet McMillan. He seems to be the guy that's going to be the alpha receiver there. Adam Thielen, he came back from injury from week 12 on. He was wide receiver 13. Jalen Coker had some nice games with Thielen out. So it feels like they go pretty solidly 4 deep at the wide receiver position with those 4 guys. And if I'm their 5th guy is rookie Jimmy Horn, and then David Moore is their wide receiver 6, and they signed Hunter Renfrow. So they have some guys that they can slot into traditional kind of positions. Adam Thielen, Jimmy Horn, Hunter Renfrow, they're slot guys. Coker and Legette, they're I don't want to say gadget guys, but they're more that Deebo Samuel type of wide receiver. McMillan, David Moore, they're your traditional outside X receivers. So they're pretty good there. Tommy Tremble, I don't know that he's really a whole lot of receiving threat. That feels more like it's a Jatavian Sanders role. But I don't know how much they're going to use 2 tight ends. The thing that puzzled me was if I'm Rico Dowdle and I've fought to get a starting job, and then when I got it, behind a relatively poor offensive line, I still put up 1,000 yards, and I'm going to run right into free agency and take an early deal as a backup. Now I get it.
Maybe there
Chuba,
wasn't a big market for him because it doesn't seem like Dallas was too interested in keeping him, didn't they? They had already signed Javonte Williams by the time he went to
yeah,
Carolina.
it's just I don't know. It felt like it felt like he didn't really even aim for somewhere he could potentially be a starter. And don't get me wrong, I know Chuba is not a superstar. He's kind of a jag himself, but
Outs-
maybe he thinks that
Outside
his
of
best case
Dallas, though,
scenario
where would
is a
he
split.
where would have been a great place for him to compete as a starter? Because he didn't seem to have a lot of buzz. He's kind of one of those players you're like, yeah, he was all right, and then you go back and look and you're like, well, damn, that was actually a pretty nice season, but it just didn't seem like there was a lot of buzz, and it was a big running back class, so we weren't seeing free agent running backs get a lot of traction or deals that his agent might have told him that's the best you can get, because I don't think it was a bad money. Let me look at his. I thought it was a decent money deal, maybe more than what they gave to no, 1 year, 2.75 million. It feels like those were about all that we were getting. You had a lot of 1 year, 2.5, 1 year, 3 million. So he can go back into the pool again next year. But I just don't feel like there was a lot of places to go. And this wasn't the good last offseason. You wanted to be a running back as a free agent because people were looking at the draft going, holy my God, we got to get it done now. This offseason felt different, and people were like, we don't need to be in a rush to get our
I
back.
mean, I get that, but I think he could have went into New York and won that job with the Giants.
Yeah, and they're curious because I guess they took Scatabo, but they weren't the high mover. I just don't
where
know
else
if
I
they
was thinking,
value running backs, to be honest. Washington would have been an interesting,
yeah.
Going back with Dan Quinn, I guess. They didn't really make any moves
Who was it?
at
There
running
was
back
somebody else
either.
I was thinking. The Bears. I think he could have went in and potentially pushed what's his face Swift, because while I expect Ben Johnson to use the hell out of Swift, I also know Johnson really wasn't super keen on him. Maybe even Minnesota. If he had went to Minnesota, he could have
Minnesota
pushed the
pretty quick.
30-year-old Aaron Jones.
Yeah, they signed Aaron Jones back real quick, and I'm pretty sure they traded for Jordan Mason before free agency really got underway either. I just, you know, they all have agents. His agent must have been giving him some advice that was about what he could expect.
Yeah, and I get it. I don't, I'm not sure what the runway is on Chuba Hubbard's career. I know they signed him to an extension, but it's not out of the question that Hubbard gets overtaken by Dowdle, or Hubbard ends up splitting 50-50 with Dowdle.
Or, the other scenario is, does Dowdle even hold the number 2 job? Because a lot of people liked the pick of Trevor Etienne. He went in, I think, the 4th round. So it'll be interesting. I think Carolina has some interesting pieces. See if they can start gelling more. Having maybe Thielen pass the torch a little bit more to Leggett and Tet McMillan, Chua Hubbard. They had a long rebuilding to go, and they've made some strides.
They need to, if their defense gets a little better, can get the offense back on the field, they may be able to make some steps offensively.
They've definitely made more strides than the team that finished 4th last year, who would charitably be called a dumpster fire, and that is the New Orleans Saints. They finished 5-12 last year. That might be optimistic for their 2025. They brought in Kellen Moore. I don't know what he saw in that job that made him so attractive, but quarterback Derek Carr retired. Marquez Valdez-Scantling went to Seattle. They parted ways with defensive end Peyton Turner and linebacker Willie Gay. They drafted Tyler Shook in the 2nd round of the draft. They brought back an aging Brandon Cooks at wide receiver. They brought in Kelvin Banks at offensive line, and older veterans in safety Justin Reed and defensive end Chase Young. The older veterans part doesn't totally make sense to me because this does not feel like a team that is going to be anywhere near competing. Last year's fantasy finishes, Derek Carr, quarterback 26. Spencer Rattler was quarterback 41, started 7 games, did not win any of them. Kamara's still there, running back 9 last year. Chris Olave missed a lot of the season with concussions, wide receiver 94. Rashid Shaheed, wide receiver 92, lost it with a leg injury. Brandon Cooks was available for Dallas, but they seem to forget about him a lot of the time. He finished as wide receiver 96. Juwan Johnson, an older tight end who got a pretty lucrative extension, finished as tight end 17. Dennis, you would potentially like Kamara. I'm nervous about Olave's long-term health, but he, Shaheed, even Cooks and Johnson might have some upside if they had a quarterback, which – you have the rookie Tyler Shook, second-round drafter Spencer Rattler, who did not look good last year, and Jake Hayner, who was a late-round draft pick the year prior. They have made no moves to get a veteran, even though we keep expecting that there's going to be some dawning realization. I think if we're being honest, this is my pick for the number 1 overall draft pick in 2026, where they probably would go get a franchise quarterback if they're available. I think Shook is probably who I think is going to start the most games, but I'm not optimistic about this offense.
Yeah, it's tough to buy in. I will say one of the things they have going for them, drafting Kelvin Banks, first round draft pick. 3 years ago, Trevor Penning, left guard, first round draft pick. 6 years ago, Eric McCoy, center, second round draft pick. 5 years ago, Cesar Ruiz, first-round draft pick. Last year, Taliese Fuaga, first-round draft pick. So they've invested some draft capital in their starting offensive line. Can they gel? Can they hold up? If Olave stays healthy, Bub Means is his backup, and Bub Means is like, Chris Olave is a 4-4 guy, and Bub Means is a 4-6 guy. I don't know how well that matches up. I almost feel like the way they've got it slotted is Rashid Shaheed in the slot. I almost feel like if Olave gets injured again, they're going to move Shaheed outside and bump Dante Pettis up into the slot or Cedric Wilson into the slot. So they have, the fizzling Donovan Peoples-Jones way back there, third on the depth chart. It's going to be a rough year. It feels like, if I remember correctly, because of the way things were going with the Eagles, I think Kellen Moore just ran out of job opportunities. And it's like, if I'm going to be the guy somewhere this year, I need to, there's really only when he was at a position where he could accept an offer, there really weren't a lot of offers left.
Which is why he should have done what Dan Quinn did for the Cowboys, where he put himself out there. He got some offers. He was the front runner in some places, but none of it was a great fit. So he waited, went back, had another great year as defensive coordinator in Dallas, and then looked at the pool of options and found one that was a better fit. I know Moore has gone through the cycles a few times. He's probably a little gun shy because last time he was a hot offensive assistant candidate. The very next year, things didn't go well. Then he changed scenes, and then he was not. But I would think he took this job with some understanding that this was going to be a rebuild, and I no one should be mentioning the hot seat for him because these are the quarterbacks he inherited. Rattler, I was wrong. He started 6 games. 0-6 as a starter, 57% completions, 1,317 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. That's not good for 6 starts. Jake Hayner, 1 start, 0-1, 46.2% completion percentage, 226 yards, a TD, and an INT. That's not good either. Tyler Shook maybe has some upside, but is decidedly...
Hayner is even more not good.
Well, Tyler Shook might, even though he's a rookie, I think is older than either of the other 2 quarterbacks because he has a really checkered injury history. So this feels like the kind of roster you're assembling if you are indeed playing for the number 1 draft pick and getting ready to start a massive rebuild, which would make some sense. I don't get the big extensions for older players like Juwan Johnson or big contracts for like a Justin Reed or a Chase Young. Doesn't make a total sense. I would have started shedding payroll and started the ship turning over, especially since maybe they did all that thinking that they were going to ride out Derek Carr one more year and then he retired. But all the discussion had been that the Saints were seemingly aware since the end of last year that Carr was a long shot for 2025. So I just don't really get what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and the Saints have been in salary cap hell for quite some time.
Yeah.
And they keep kicking stuff down the road. They have $82 million in dead cap this year.
Yeah.
I don't know what the plan is, how they're going to figure that shit out. But Kellen Moore, I agree with you. He sat down and said, look, if I'm going to take this job and you don't have a quarterback, and yeah, we can draft one, but where we're drafting, we're not looking at getting one of the good ones.
Well, and it wasn't a good year to be pressed for a quarterback. They were the second team, I think, to take a quarterback.
Yeah, it's
or the third team, maybe. Dart might have gone more.
So if they, they got a couple pieces. Their running back room is kind of funny. You got an aging Alvin Kamara, the perpetual doghouse Kendre Miller. They drafted a rookie in Devin Neal in the 6th round who, looked pretty good in college. Then they signed Cam Akers and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Who are the other two guys?
Maybe they're just going to run
Velus Jones and Marcus Yarns. It's like,
yeah, we'll have to see. This leads us to, we usually wrap up by talking about the finishes. I already kind of gave away. I feel like the New Orleans Saints are my pick to be the number 1 overall pick, but then otherwise, I'm not sure this division shakes out a whole lot different than last year. I like Tampa Bay to win. I think they are sneakily one of the better teams in the NFC, and then I think Atlanta and Carolina will have their moments, but I don't think either of them make the playoffs.
Yeah, I see both of them missing the playoffs. I see them. I don't necessarily see Carolina finishing 3 games behind Atlanta. But I don't see Atlanta being over 500 either. So,
maybe you get to 9, but
what's that?
Maybe they get to 9. I think like 7 to 9 wins is probably where.
But I mean, would we be surprised if Atlanta only won 6?
I mean, I'd be a little surprised if they only won 6. I think they'll be a little bit better than that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they only won 7 or, regressed a little bit. We'll have to see how they do. But
I mean, I could see Atlanta and Carolina both at 7 and 10.
Yeah. Which for Carolina, that would be moving in the right direction. For Atlanta, does Raheem Morris start to feel a little bit of pressure? Because there was a lot of talk about them being heavy NFC South favorites going into last year. And the whole thing with Cousins didn't totally pan out, and they ended up flaming out hard. They were 6-3 at one point, and they ended up 8-9. That's an oof down the stretch. And they were still in a pretty tight division race when they decided to pull the plug on Kirk Cousins, and they ended up going 1-2 and knocking themselves out of it completely. And if things don't go well with Penix, I could see that being problematic.
Yeah, I think it's a 1 playoff team division.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back on Tuesday looking at the AFC South, another probably 1 playoff team division on the other side. But we will be doing shows back-to-back days next week. As a heads up, we'll be doing Tuesday and Wednesday because Dennis and I have some stuff going on Thursday and Friday. And then starting the following week, we are going to transition off Fridays over to Thursdays, which will be good for the season, kind of a recap episode and a preview episode as we're going through. And we're getting ready to start that first of our transitioning to Thursdays, July 31st, is actually a game day because that is the first week of the preseason. But Dennis, if folks have some free time on their hands this weekend, what can they do?
Do what we do. Go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast. Give us a subscribe, give us a like.
We will appreciate it. Well, we hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the weekend, and we will be back on Tuesday talking a little AFC South.